President Biden is looking to energize the Democratic Party on the one-year anniversary of his American Rescue Plan.
The president enacted the $1.9 trillion stimulus package on this day last year. It provided rental assistance, tax rebates, and direct payments to Americans in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Biden traveled to Philadelphia to speak before the House Democratic Caucus earlier today. During his address, the president praised Democrats' efforts to pass the bill and praised the party's successes over the past year.
Because of that law, we helped to keep a roof over 4 million people's heads who were about to be evicted. And we gave families what my dad used to call just a little bit of breathing room. Just a little bit of breathing room. Because we took action, we created 6.7 million jobs last year, more than any other time in American history. And we hadn't stopped.
Right now, we want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion for more on this, and she's with the president there in Philadelphia. Nikole, thank you for joining us. It's kind of a home game for the president. He was there with Democrats. But what stood out most to you about his remarks today?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, you heard him both address domestic and foreign policy. He started off the speech talking about this being perhaps the most important off-election year that he can recall in recent history, and talked about the importance of trying to retain the majority, which is significant because we know Democrats are facing a lot of headwinds going into this midterm cycle, and certainly Republicans are very optimistic about their prospects for regaining control of Congress. The second thing is that we heard the president also talk about the situation once again in Ukraine. As we know, earlier this morning, the president announced that the United States would be revoking, permanent normal trade relations with Russia, and revoking its most favored nation status, for instance, in partnership with other G7 countries. And so from that standpoint, you heard the president talk a little bit about those decisions, a little bit about his conversation earlier today with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who he said he speaks to almost daily. And what he also noted is that he said that he understands Congress's frustration with the situation there, with wanting to move quickly. And you heard him kind of urge patience in the sense of saying, look, we have to move in concert with some of these other nations. So he talked about understanding Congress's frustrations on certain aspects of this conflict, because certainly the administration has taken a lot of incoming from members of Congress in terms of, moving quicker on some of these things like an oil ban and tougher sanctions. But he said, in essence, we have to work in concert with our European partners. He thanked them for approving aid to Ukraine, which just happened at the end of this week, both in the House and the Senate, through a massive government spending package. And then he also made clear that, with respect to weapons and armor, he said we can't just necessarily send tanks and troops into the region, because that would be World War III. So you heard him really also make the case, which has kind of been a sticking point with Congress, in terms of, for instance, sending fighter jets through Poland to Ukraine. That has kind of become a little bit of a flashpoint between some members of Congress and the administration. So you heard him kind of explain why the administration is kind of taking some of the steps that it is doing. And then finally, you heard him get back at the end of the speech kind of to those pocketbook issues with respect to inflation, which is something that Republicans have been hitting Democrats on. And he talked about some of the reasons behind that, it's not his fault, it's not Democrats' fault, but in his view, a lot of this stems from the aftermath of COVID. And now with this situation in Ukraine and this Russian invasion, which is a term we will continue to hear going forward, that this is Putin's fault, that this is Putin's war. And that's why Americans are seeing higher prices at the pump. And he explained that Democrats would do what they could to try to bring some of those prices down, but he argued they shouldn't necessarily take the blame for it.
Certainly a full plate for President Biden right now, of course. Nikole, why do you think he felt the need to address the party on the one-year anniversary of the American Rescue Plan?
Well, there's a lot of symbolism there with that. First and foremost, the president has been speaking to Democrats all week. There was a Democratic retreat for Senate Democrats on Wednesday, so he addressed them. Last night, he was in Washington addressing the Democratic National Committee at its winter meeting. And then, of course, here today, he is addressing House Democrats at their retreat. And I think it's really to, again, kind of gear them up for this midterm cycle, but also to, make sure that Democrats stay on the same page. This is also part of a strategy that we are seeing from Democrats in terms of, as they try to reset and promote their agenda, really touting and being proud of the accomplishments that they have made. Certainly, we know the president has suffered some setbacks in terms of, for instance, his Build Back Better plan couldn't get through Congress, but they did get infrastructure through. So, they have been doing a number of events around that, which you heard him mention today, touting the bipartisan infrastructure law with respect to the American Rescue Plan. I think it's important to note this was one of the first things out of the gate that was one of the president's top priorities. It's in essence what he campaigned on in terms of trying to address the pandemic, which was really at a climax at the time that he was running. And so that was one of his first orders of business. And so, they want to celebrate the accomplishments of that law, whether it's helped to, provide funding to reopen schools, whether it's helped to vaccinate 200 million Americans, provide more at-home tests. Many people got stimulus checks out of that legislation. So Democrats are really working to try to highlight what they've done instead of focusing on some of those things that are still lingering.
All right, Nikole Killion, thanks for your insight and breaking it down for us there in Philadelphia. Thanks.
You bet.